a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.
The Tonse Alliance last week announced that former Republican President Edgar Chagwa Lungu is its candidate for the 2026 presidential election, setting him up for the challenge to President Hakainde Hichilema and other contenders. Lungu has accepted the alliance's endorsement, vowed to restore the rule of law, democracy and constitutionalism if re-elected in the 2026 polls. The announcement was made by Tonse Alliance Chairperson Dr. Danny Pule during an official event in Lusaka last week. The alliance, composed of 7 opposition parties, expressed confidence in Lungu's leadership, with Pule calling it a game changer that Zambians had been waiting for to secure a victory in the upcoming general election. Meanwhile, UPND spokesperson Cornelius Muto has criticized the formation of the Tonse Alliance, describing it as a failed project, and accused former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu and the PF of trying to rebrand themselves and escape a legacy of violence, terrorism, division, and economic mismanagement. Tonight, we look at the beginning of the political marathon or build-up towards Zambia's 2026 general and presidential election, and obviously the amalgamation of political parties into alliances. We ask the questions: is Tonse really the game changer? What happens to the United Kwacha Alliance? We also saw the MMD signing an agreement with the UPND trying to broaden the alliance. All this on a global backdrop within the region, Botswana having a change of guard with the opposition scooping parliament and a new president in Duma Boko. That obviously comes on a global backdrop of a huge shift in the United States global politics, Donald Trump bouncing back. What does that mean for geopolitics across the world? We'll be discussing this shortly, right after this. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me on Costa this evening. And obviously we're live on DSTV's channel 271 across the country, as well as in Botswana, Namibia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. It's channel 20 on GoTV live on our Facebook. It's streaming Diamond TV online, as well as Diamond Media Zambia. My guest this evening is the new Tonse Alliance spokesperson and also the president of the Patriots for Economic Progress, President Sean Tembo. Always a pleasure to have you on Costa, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Costa, and of course, a very good evening to all of your viewers out there.
Before we get to zero in to obviously the cracks of our discussion, this evening, talking about the newly formed Tonse Alliance, I'd just like you to, zero in on the biggest breaking, or biggest stories of the week we have just come out from. Donald Trump bouncing back as, President of the United States of America, removing the Democrats. The Republicans have come back in a big way, having majority in both Congress and Senate, winning over 315 electoral college votes. And then we saw a similar shift in Botswana, little known opposition, and the people voted out a party that has been in power since the elections over 50 years, something that was unforeseen. And now we have a new change of guard in Botswana with President Duma Boko. Obviously, with the endorsement of former President Ian Khama in Botswana. What is your take as a political player within the global landscape? What do these results mean for global politics? What are they telling us?
For us, Costa, the writing is on the wall. It's very clear that wherever you are in the world, the will of the people shall always prevail. in the United States of America, the will of the American people prevailed. In Botswana, the will of the Botswana people prevailed. And the prevailing of the will of the people shall always take place regardless of whatever impediments the governing government of the day might put in place. We saw in Botswana that they wanted to amend the constitution at the very last moment, on the last day of the sitting of the parliament, and that was defeated. And they wanted to change a lot of things, which would not have made the victory by the United Democratic change possible. But the will of the people prevailed. We saw in the United States that they tried to slap all sorts of funny charges on the former president, Donald Trump. And one thing worth noting about those charges, Costa, is the fact that those alleged criminal conducts happened actually a long time ago, and they waited along the electoral cycle until towards elections when they decided to initiate court action. But despite that, despite painting Donald Trump as a criminal convict, despite doing and saying all sorts of things, the will of the people happened. Similarly, here in Zambia, we have seen machinations by the government of the day to try and prevent our 2026 presidential candidate, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, from contesting by raising all sorts of flimsy eligibility cases and other things, harassing him and so on and so forth. And I want to take this opportunity, Costa, I want to take this moment to assure the Zambian people that the will of the Zambian people in 2026 shall prevail. Dr. Edgar Chagwa, the 60th Republican president, shall become the 8th Republican president.
Let's come back to the announcement that was made, last week. This Tonse Alliance, is it formed on the backdrop of these things that you're seeing in global politics, that if Donald Trump can bounce back, if there can be a change of guard in Botswana, if President Lula of Brazil can bounce back, is that what gives you confidence and you're fielding? You've come up with this alliance and very quickly endorsed Edgar Lungu as your candidate, despite the fact that we've got a ruling on his eligibility coming up on the 10th of December.
Two issues, Costa, that you've raised. Number one, yes, to some extent, the geopolitics played a part in our decision to endorse the 60th Republican president as our preferred candidate. But to a large extent, it is the demands and the cries of the Zambian people that actually compelled us to adopt Dr. Edgar Chagwa, the 60th Republican president, as our candidate for 2026. In terms of the issue of eligibility, which was your later question, for us as Tonse Alliance, we've got no doubt in our minds that that decision, that judgment which is coming on the 10th of December shall be in favor of Dr. Edgar Chagwa. You might want to ask me, on what basis do I premise that confidence? I premise that confidence on the fact that that case is not being brought before the Constitutional Court for the first time. It has been brought before the Constitutional Court on 6 other occasions, and on each one of those 6 occasions, the court has ruled in favor of Dr. Edgar Chagwa. And I can tell you, Costa, that personally, I don't have much confidence in the judiciary, especially under the dispensation of the current administration of Dr. Hakainde Hichilema. I feel he has compromised the judiciary to a very large extent at all levels, from the subordinate court all the way to the Constitutional Court. But I strongly feel that despite the fact that our judiciary is compromised on this particular matter of the eligibility of Dr. Edgar Chagwa to stand in the 2026 general election, they will not be able to manipulate that particular decision. They are compelled. Their back is against the wall.
For now, that is basically an opinion fomented by yourself, because you're not on the bench and like you're saying, you wouldn't want to be too prejudicial, so only the courts know the outcome. Before we
know the outcome.
Well,
we know that Dr. Edgar Chagwa shall be declared to be eligible.
Well,
and I've given you the background.
Only the courts then can determine that. Let's just go back a little bit further, for the sake of our viewers this evening. Just briefly run us through the origins, the rationale, in terms of who Tonse Alliance is, what is it, the composition of the membership. We know it's 7 opposition parties, and why the name Tonse? Because this is the same sort of campaign or brand name we saw in Malawi, that saw President now, then and late Vice President Saulos Chilima running within the Tonse Alliance. Why Tonse? Who are you? What is the rationale? What's the membership like?
Okay. So the word Tonse is actually a Bantu word. It means together. If you look at our logo, you'll see that there are 2 hands holding. It means unity. It means togetherness. And that is very critical in as far as alliances are concerned. As to why Tonse, we conceived of the idea of Tonse on the basis of what was prevailing on the current political platform in Zambia, whereby the ruling party has gone out of its way to compromise various institutions of democracy, including other opposition political parties. You've seen how the Patriotic Front Party has been wrestled from the rightful owners and given to all sorts of people. Today it's given to this one, the other day it's given to the other one. All that is conceived by the current administration on the basis of their fear for democracy. Because
but wouldn't you describe that as basically internal political infighting?
No, not at all.
Amongst the members
not
themselves?
Not at all.
When you say from the rightful owners, those that are wrestling power within the PF, are they not members themselves?
Not if they are being aided and abetted by the judiciary. Not if they are being aided and abetted by the Registrar of Societies. Not if they are being aided and abetted by the government of the day.
Is that an assumption or a proven fact?
It's a proven fact. You saw the testimony from the former Registrar of Societies, Mrs. Mhende, as to what occurred when the officers of the Patriotic Front were changed. It's something which is in the public domain, Costa. There's no need to argue against it. So, but you've digressed me from my thoughts. What I was saying is that there is a lot of fear from the government of the day regarding the various, players of democracy, including political parties. And that is why when we joined previous alliances, there was a hidden hand to destabilize us, to make sure that we are not able to unite under the platform of those previous alliances. And so we asked ourselves, okay, we are heading into 2026, and the Zambian people want us to unite. The Zambian people do not want us to split the vote. They want us to be together. So we said, okay, fine, how can we go about it? How can we come up with an interference-proof alliance, an alliance which the government would not be able to interfere with even if they wanted? And so we reached out. We reached out to our brothers and sisters in Kenya. In Kenya, they came up with a very successful alliance. They called it the Orange Alliance. And then we reached out to our brothers and sisters in Malawi. They also had a very successful alliance. And then together with ourselves, we put our heads together, and we came up with a model of an alliance, which is an electoral pact. Apart from that attempt in 2008 between the then opposition PF and the then opposition UPND to form that PF-UPND electoral pact, there hasn't been any other attempt in the Zambian political system to create an electoral pact. So we have created Tonse as an electoral pact with the input from consultants and advisors in Malawi as well as Kenya. And that's how Tonse was essentially born.
Yeah. You claim that this response is due to popular demand by the citizenry that you need to be together. One would rather say that this is more about your individual political party interests that are coming together and your own selfish political interests. Because what litmus test have you carried out or considered to say that the people want Edgar Chagwa Lungu back as a president in 2026, for you to say the people have told you go and be together, but Edgar should be your candidate? Two, you're also, when you say the people want you to be together and not split the vote, this is exactly what you're doing, President Sean Tembo, because only a few weeks ago, your party, Edgar Lungu himself and his faction of the PF were part of an alliance called the United Kwacha Alliance. you have split into Tonse and left the Harry Calabas, you've left the Sakwibas quarters, you've left the Savoys there, the Jackson Silavwe. So how would you say you're Tonse when you've just split out of another alliance and formed another one?
You're asking me too many questions, Costa, but I'll try to answer each one of them, because I'll start with the first one. What makes us confident that the people on the ground want Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu? The writing is on the wall.
Are the people saying they want Edgar back?
The writing is on the wall.
Is that what the Zambians are saying?
Allow me to explain. Right now, I'm coming from Kafue. We went there to attend a church service. It was a Thanksgiving church service, to thank God for, enabling us to have a very successful launch of the Tonse Alliance on Thursday of last week. So we went there to have a Thanksgiving service at the United Church of Zambia, and it was very successful, But the point I want to bring out is, during that church service, each and every congregant in there was trying to come and greet Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. When he was leaving, as well as when he was coming, he was swarmed by people. Others were crying, old women crying, "We want you back, Tulemi Fwaya, Mweke Lepo," crying like I felt a lot of remorse. You understand? That is the kind of emotion, and that happens wherever Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu goes. Now, I want to contrast that with the interaction in public of the incumbent president, Dr. Hakainde Hichilema. I've attended several traditional ceremonies where Dr. Hakainde Hichilema would be there. And, us would be seated as the protocol, and then they announce on the public address system, please welcome, the Republican president, Dr. Hakainde Hichilema. And then there would only be two people clapping close to where he's going to sit. And my view is those would be part of his entourage. Let me finish, Costa. Let me just finish, just a minute. Those would obviously be part of his entourage. Just two people clapping, and then he would walk in like it's a district commissioner walking in without people reacting.
You are describing political sentiment, because
that is what matters.
In any given case,
if it happens, let me just finish, Costa.
In any given
when
case,
it happens across the country, then that is the direction which the people want.
You are giving us an example of Kafue. Even you, Sean Tembo, when you move with paid or sponsored supporters or people that sympathize.
I don't do that. Not
people that sympathize with you.
It's not necessary. For me, people sympathize genuinely.
It's not a litmus test. But let me ask you this question. Are you telling me tonight that just because people want to queue up to greet Edgar Lungu,
they swarm him? People swarm him.
People swarm him whether they are paid for or not.
They are not paid for. Those are genuine.
That means Edgar is the one with the solutions to the current challenges that the country will use that as the basis for his capacity and competence to rule the country based on people greeting him. That's what makes him an eligible candidate.
In the previous question, that question had a lot of sub-questions.
I'll come back to it.
And, for the sake of the viewers, I want to answer each one of your questions.
I'm asking a follow-up to what you're justifying.
Before I come to this question...
Does Edgar become a suitable candidate or qualified candidate on the basis that people swarm to greet him?
Let's have some order, Costa, so that the people can benefit. You asked me a question. First of all, your questions are very loaded. They have a lot of sub-questions. So allow me to answer all of them so that the people can appreciate out there. In the previous question, I'll come to this one. In the previous question, you asked me to say, why Tonse now? You left your brothers and sisters in Uka. Do you think it is unity for you to go Tonse while leaving Uka?
Correct.
I want to answer that question, if you allow me. Our approach as Tonse is that the Tonse platform is the best platform to use as a launchpad to challenge the ruling party in 2026. We are not saying that any of the people, any of the brothers and sisters that we left in Uka are, bad people. No, they are very good people. And we have seen sentiments from some of our, brothers and sisters there saying this and saying that about Tonse. And for us, we haven't responded. And the reason is simple. we believe that our battle is with the ruling party and not any of the other colleagues in the opposition. And in terms of our view, Costa, and our overall plan as Tonse, we want to be able to reach out to our brothers and sisters in UCA and other alliances. There's also the people we want, there's also People's Pact and so on and so forth. Our plan is to reach out to these brothers and sisters, and, you know, if we erred, if we wronged them in any way, we apologize, and then we would want us to move together. UCA, Tonse, People's Pact, everybody together, so that as we approach 2026, we are going to be a united opposition.
There's a question pending, but allow me to ask you a follow-up on what you're explaining.
Yes.
How then, spokesperson of Tonse Alliance,
Yes.
Tembo, would you tell me tonight that you want to still collectively dialogue,
Not dialogue,
discuss,
we are investing our brothers.
and embrace people from UCA, who you were part of just 2 weeks ago? Why would you want them to move to Tonse? The truth of the matter that you're not telling us tonight is that the departure points or the conflict why you have gone to Tonse is because those that have remained in UCA refuse to endorse the candidature of Edgar Lungu. So the Tonse project is an Edgar Lungu candidature project. That's what we're getting.
As far as I'm concerned,
So there'll be no agreement with those who have been left in UCA as long as they don't agree that Edgar should be the candidate.
As far as I'm
Do you
concerned,
deny that that's a departure point?
As far as I'm concerned, by the time that we had left UCA, the issue of adoption of a candidate had not been tabled. It had not been subjected to a vote. If subsequent to our leaving UCA, that issue was tabled, then we are not aware about it.
So that's not the departure point?
The departure point in UCA, at the time I was there, was at what point do we unveil our 2026 presidential candidate? In my view, that was the main departure point. Our colleagues in UCA believed that we were not in a hurry to do so, that there were some who even said we can unveil our candidate even on the day of nomination. You understand? For us, we said, no, look, a presidential candidate requires a lot of time to mobilize on the ground and prepare themselves and so on and so forth. So there was that departure. As far as I'm concerned, that was the only departure point. But if you are aware of other departure points...
It's still on the candidate.
You know, that is a matter of strategy.
You felt a candidate needed to be identified, endorsed...
And unveiled. Yes.
Unveiled, and you begin to
immediately,
campaign.
Yes.
And so then this is exactly what I'm saying, because your launch of Tonse, above anything else, before you even tell us what you stand for, before you tell us what your ideologies are, is an aspect.
We explained all those aspects during the launch of Tonse.
You've already revealed a candidate.
Yes, yes. You know, it's a matter of strategy, Costa.
Yeah.
That is why I believe that the points of departure between Tonse and UCA are not very significant, because we are talking about strategic issues. And the thing about strategic issues is that, you know, you implement political strategy based on your understanding of politics. My understanding of politics will not be the same as, you know, another UCA member's understanding of politics. But that doesn't mean that you cannot reconcile your approaches to issues. That is why I'm telling you that I've got a lot of confidence that eventually we are going to reconcile with our brothers and sisters in UCA, and that they are going to come on board at Tonse, so that together we can march forward towards 2026.
Let me come briefly, I move away from Tonse. Let me come to you as president of the Patriots for Economic Progress. President Tembo, what are you trying to show your followers, those who support you? What are your principalities in terms of what you believe in? Because you've been quite flip-floppy in terms of alliances. At one point, you sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? You were fraternizing. You were fraternizing before the 2021 election with the UPND alliance. You joined that. You broke away. You went it alone, and I've covered you participating in presidential elections. I think the 2021 was your second.
No, it was the first.
It was the first. One would have been thinking that you'd be gaining momentum for the party, mobilizing in the manner you started, giving alternative budgets, giving alternative policy direction. Now you were in UCA, again you've left. And what is very interesting and puzzling for me is the PEP supporting President Edgar Lungu and his peer faction, because you've got totally different political ideologies in terms of when
you think so?
In terms of, I have interviewed you, the way you look at things, you were totally against Edgar Lungu and the PF, Sean Tembo. You've sat with me so many
you've
times.
spoken a lot. You are speaking more than the guest.
What has changed?
You are speaking more than the guest. Or do you want me to start interviewing you?
What has changed?
Okay. So I'll start with your last question, Costa. It is true. It is true that I disagreed with the Patriotic Front when they were in office on a number of issues. For instance, I disagreed with them on the way infrastructure projects were being implemented. I felt that there was too much focus towards Lusaka at the expense of other parts of the country, like the regional centers. You know, Zambia is big. So I disagreed with them quite strongly on that. I also disagreed with them on the issue of borrowing. I felt that they were borrowing too much. I disagreed with them, and it's on record. So I disagreed with them on a number of issues. I disagreed with them on the issue of cadreism. You understand? So I disagreed on a number of issues. And you fast forward to now. Of course, when you look at some of the things that we condemned the Patriotic Front on, in view of the 3 years that we've had the UPND, you know, I begin to realize that we were being unfair on the Patriotic Front. Okay. So I'll give you an example, two examples actually. The first one is the issue of the infrastructure development. My bone of contention was that infrastructure development was concentrated in Lusaka at the expense of other areas. But now you look at the UPND administration, you find that there is no infrastructure development at all, not even in Lusaka, that you can talk home about. So you realize, say, it's better to have some infrastructure development than zero infrastructure development. I'll come back to the second issue, the issue of borrowing. I disagreed with the Patriotic Front government strongly on the issue of borrowing. Every time we release our alternative budget, we would highlight the proportion of the national budget which is being funded by borrowing, specifically domestic debt. But in retrospect now, after seeing how the UPND are doing things, I then realized that the Patriotic Front administration was far much better because, take for instance the issue of domestic debt, which is made up of, you know, the treasury bills and government bonds, which are issued by the central bank on behalf of government. The Patriotic Front found domestic debt at about 38 billion kwacha. And over the 10-year period that they were in office, they moved it from 38 to 78 billion. That's a total borrowing of about 40 billion kwacha. Now, you look at the infrastructure they did, well and good. It's visible, you can see it. You look at Levi Mwansa Hospital, International Airport, this and that. Now you fast forward to UPND. The UPND took over domestic debt on the 26th of August 2021 from 78 billion to the current 232 billion kwacha. You understand? That's an increment of about 160 billion kwacha over a period of 3 years. 160 billion kwacha. And then you say, okay, fine, you've borrowed all this money. You've borrowed about 4 times more than the Patriotic Front in their 10 years. What have you done with this money? What infrastructure have you done with this money? We saw the face of Lusaka change. We saw these flyover bridges. We saw Great East Road being expanded into 6 lanes. We saw this and that under the PF with the 40 billion they had borrowed. You, UPND, with your 160 billion kwacha which you borrowed, what have you done? I struggle to point at any significant infrastructure project. Let me finish, Costa. Let me just finish. Give me a minute. Okay, give me a minute. Just a minute, please. Just a minute. Don't try to speak more than the guest. I'm the guest here.
No.
Okay, just a minute.
I'm actually giving you justifications for my question.
Just a minute. So, on that basis, I then realized to say, in as much as I was challenging the Patriotic Front government on the issue of debt contraction, on the issue of the distribution of infrastructure projects, I was actually to some extent being unfair to them. You understand? Compared to the UPND. So right now, one of the reasons that I've decided to work together with the Patriotic Front, that I've embraced my brothers and sisters in the Patriotic Front, is because I have some guilt in the back of my mind that I was being unfair on them in terms of the way they were running the government, that it was not as bad as I understood it or as I portrayed it, and that they were far much better than the way they were actually portrayed. And I've got no shame to say that to the public. They were far much better than the way they were portrayed. Of course, I'm not saying they didn't make mistakes. They made mistakes. For instance, on the issue of cadreism, there is no excuse. But President Edgar Lungu has come out to the public clearly, and he is on record, having apologized for not doing enough to address the issue of cadreism, and he has promised the Zambian people that when he's given...
May I ask my question?
Let me finish my sentence. He has assured the Zambian people that when he is given the next new mandate as the 8th president of this country, he will ensure that the issue of cadreism is nowhere near his governance.
President Sean Tembo, you said Lusaka is not Zambia. And again, when you commend the PF, first of all, you spoke about ballooning domestic debt under the UPND in the last 3 years. Correct me, but I don't think most of the road projects under the PF were done under the domestic debt basket. They were done under the external debt borrowing, of which we're still limping with over $15 billion of external debt.
So let's talk about external debt. Let me explain to you the movement of external debt.
I need to give context as well to my questions.
Sure.
I need to give context. You're not the one interviewing, I am.
Go ahead.
I am.
Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
So when the PF was leaving power in 2021, whether they returned power, you'll agree with me that even if it was PEP to take over power in 2021, you still would have found a debt mountain of over $13 billion. It
was 11.
To deal with.
External debt was 11.
You are still going to find a debt mountain to deal with. Agreed?
I wouldn't call it a mountain. I would have found debt, yes, but not a mountain. A mountain is an exaggeration.
It was a debt mountain on the basis of calculation on the volume of GDP based on what we're doing. But then each government that had to come in still had to deal with the debt. And they constructed those things with the fact that they had pushed that debt forward. You say now you can't see any development. Maybe President Sean Tembo, you're not traveling out of Lusaka. You're comparing, so you don't see anything in Lusaka. They've brought about CDF as a decentralization equalizer, boreholes being sunk.
It's on paper. It's on paper, you're not there.
It's not on paper.
Yeah.
We've seen all these projects being undertaken.
Those are petty projects.
You are not going out in the rural areas yourself.
Those are petty projects.
Why would you say they're petty projects?
They're petty projects
when in the budget there's money for feeder roads, there's money for hospitals, there's money for schools, there's money for boreholes. How would you describe, when people need water, how would you describe them petty projects?
They are petty projects. I'll explain. But you raised
Giving
the issue.
people water is petty projects, according to you.
You raised the issue of foreign debt. So before we come to the issue of CDF projects, can we talk about the foreign debt so that I can explain to you the movement of foreign debt? Is that fine? Then we can come to the CDF, and I'll explain to you what is being implemented by the UPND under CDF right now. Those are petty projects. They are not durable, and it's a waste of taxpayers' money. Because Costa, Ndaramanzovuta, especially for us as Zambia, as a developing country, money is very difficult. When you look at the infrastructure that KK did, Ukaenda or the police, that police station was built in 1966. But it's still standing, very strong, durable. It's durable infrastructure. Go to Central Police, go to police houses. When you spend public taxpayers' money, you need to put up durable infrastructure. That is your duty as a government. Simungazimanga chema dongo dongo, wamangarero mairo, the Kama school is blown, the roof is blown by a wind. You understand? And yet that is taxpayers' money. That is waste of taxpayers' money. Those are petty projects.
But clearly,
you understand? Those are petty projects.
Are you being fair that even with the previous regime, the quality of works in the Auditor General's reports You and I have discussed this on this platform when you were in the opposition against the PF. You condemned them over the quality of the works.
You know, quality is a relative term.
Be honest.
Quality is a
you and
relative
I have
term.
discussed the Auditor General's report here,
the quality,
and you condemned
the quality
of the works. You're saying Madongo Dongo, there are roads that have had potholes after months, Sean Tembo.
The projects that the Patriotic Front
You've
put up.
changed
Let
now?
me finish.
You've changed.
Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, but I'm keeping
like
you accountable.
we're having an argument, not an interview.
No.
Can I speak?
I'm trying to keep you accountable.
You've challenged me on the issue of
for
quality.
things you said on this platform.
You have challenged me on the issue of quality. So can I explain?
Okay.
Or do you want to keep on talking? Can I explain? Yes. Under the Patriotic Front, yes, there were some infrastructure projects. I want to emphasize the word some infrastructure projects. In my view, maybe that would be 1% or 0.5%, which had quality issues. And those you find anywhere, even if it's an infrastructure project implemented in the United States of America, there will be some quality issues, some. But the key is to ensure that the majority of the projects you do are high quality projects. Only a small fraction, you have, some contractors who will be, misbehaving. And those you need to address, fire them and replace them. But there will be that small fraction of projects which might be faulty. That's understood. That's acceptable. But under the UPND, when you look at CDF projects, today, this year's CDF, they are building a classroom block, 1x3 classroom block. They tick the box we have built. In the next 3 years, CDF, that classroom block fell down, so they are rebuilding the same classroom block. Again, they tick the box that we've done a classroom block. The next year, the roof of that classroom block again has blown. You can't be wasting taxpayers' money doing the same project. And I'm speaking that from experience. Let me cite a specific example.
I think I will not allow you to just give opinion.
Okay.
I want you to.
I'll give you a specific example.
I want you to be accountable for things you've said on this.
Let me give you a specific example.
Let me give you a specific example. I won't allow you to run away from your accountability. You're a public leader. You sat with me here, we discussed the Auditor General's report, where these issues of people being paid money and works not being done, you said this, you can't sit here and tell me there was 0.
Which is still there. It's still there. Nothing has changed. If anything,
this is what
it has increased under the current administration.
Why are you not calling out the PF? Why are you reducing it to say it was very minimal?
It was very minimal.
No.
It was very minimal.
No. During the 10 years of the PF, the Auditor General's lapses
Costa, you are crowding up the issues.
I'm not crowding.
You are crowding up the issues because we are talking about the issues of quality.
I want to hold you accountable.
We are talking about the issues of quality. We are talking about the issues of quality.
Why have you changed?
So you can't move from the issues of quality. Now you are talking about issues of people being paid without doing the work.
It's the same thing.
No, we're talking about the issues of quality. What has been built and is it durable? That is quality.
But
if you are talking about misappropriation, let's talk about misappropriation. But don't crowd out the issues.
So
let's not crowd out the issues.
My question to keep you accountable is, why should it suit you to tell the Zambian people today that it's okay for you to fraternize with Edgar Lungu?
I'm not fraternizing him.
Now,
he's the last candidate for 2026. I'm not fraternizing him.
Who you are supporting?
Yes. But fraternizing is not the correct word.
Who you are supporting?
That's a wrong word.
But did wrong. Why can't it be Sean Tembo for 2026?
You should withdraw that word. Fraternizing is not an appropriate word.
Why?
It's got very long connotations. You understand? So I would rather you withdraw it.
Well, in my understanding, fraternizing simply means you're warming up to him.
No. That's far from what is actually happening.
My question
we are in an alliance.
Why are you warming up to a person who did wrong things that you condemned? Why does it suit you now?
I've explained to you, but the use of that word, fraternizing, is demeaning.
I'm using the word, demeaning. Why are you warming up to them now?
Yeah, so I'm asking you to withdraw the word fraternizing.
I've withdrawn to say warming up.
Okay, that's better. Costa, you're raising too many issues, but I'll try and address each one of them. I'll give you an example of a school near where I live. It's called Ellensdale School. That school, it has been built under CDF, a 1x3 classroom block. It has been built under CDF since 2022. And every time there's a rain season, the roof gets blown out. And right now, as we are speaking, they are replacing the roof of that school. You understand? That is wastage of resources because you are putting up petty projects which the Zambian people are not able to get value for their money. There's a system we have. You know, at constituency level, there are no civil engineers there. There are no electrical engineers there. They don't know what the MPA of a brick is. They don't know what the specifications of the materials that should be used in a brick are. There are no quantity surveyors there. But we have a Ministry of Infrastructure. That is why under proper planning, under a proper government, these infrastructure projects should be undertaken by the ministry at the central government level, not delegating to each and every, you know, individual to come up with infrastructure projects which are not able to last. You understand? That is my argument. But I'll come to your last question. You are saying we condemned certain things under the previous administration. Now we are working with them. I explained to you. I gave you the example of.
You are running away from my question, and I'll
What
ask
is your
it very
question?
directly to you.
Ask it again.
Why have you changed?
I haven't changed.
Why have you changed your views? Why does it suit you to support the same Edgar Lungu that you condemn now?
But
just because you have warmed up together in an alliance?
But Costa, I thought I was explaining to you. I gave you the example. Listen, guys.
And I said, why can't it be you? Why should it be Edgar Lungu?
Listen.
Why not Tembo?
I gave you the example to say, for instance, debt contraction. We thought the PF were over borrowing, but we had not seen the UPND. The UPND have borrowed 4 times more than the PF in 10 years, and yet they've done it in 3 years. So we were being unfair by condemning the PF to have over borrowed. I explained that to you.
So
how many times do I want to explain?
Why not Sean Tembo? Why Edgar Lungu?
For 2026. Because, in my view, you know, there is a time for everything. There will come a time that Sean Tembo should be on the ballot as a presidential candidate. And there is a time, right now it's a time for Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu to be on the ballot as our presidential candidate as the Tonse Alliance. For the simple reason that, in my considered view, he's the most popular candidate. If anyone is going to win us the 2026 election, it is Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. So why should we gamble? And for me, Costa, for me, I know for sure that, you know, the 2026 election is a matter of life and death. Okay. If we don't win 2026 elections, all of us in the opposition, all of us, even those who feel that they might not, all of us, in my view, will end up in prison. Because President Hakainde Hichilema,
what are you fearing?
President Hakainde Hichilema wants to get rid of all the opposition.
Why would you be in prison if you haven't committed any criminal offense?
No, you don't need to have committed an offense. You should pass by the magistrate's court there every now and then and try to monitor some cases. There is no justice taking place. They don't care whether you are guilty or you are innocent. Provided you are an opposition leader, you are going inside. You'll be convicted. That is the state of our justice. That is the state of our judiciary today.
But if you say there's no justice, in this country, President Tembo, you, among so many political leaders, are one among the few that I know is very proactive in testing our justice system by taking matters of public interest to court. And in a justice system that you don't believe in?
Well, you need to... How can I come here and say there's no justice if I haven't experimented in various court cases?
You've won some matters?
I won, you know, let me give you the statistics, Costa. Under the Patriotic Front, I took 7 matters to court, including that matter of the fire tenders. I'm sure you remember it, when they arrested us at Central Police there, when we had given notification. We took that matter to court. We won that matter at the High Court. We were awarded about 455,000 kwacha. Up to now, we haven't been paid. But we won that case. And we won 2 other cases out of the 7. You understand? So at that time, the judiciary was reasonably intact, in my view. Fast forward to now, under the 3 years of the UPND administration, we've taken a total of 13 matters to court. You know how many we've actually won? 0. 0 matters.
Then your cases have had no merit.
And some of the matters, Costa, some of the matters, let me not be prejudicial. Let's move on.
Maybe your matters have...
Let's move on.
So again, you say, quoting you, I asked you, why Edgar Lungu and not Sean Tembo? Everything has its time, and for now...
Yeah, it's Edgar Lungu.
And for now...
And there will be a time for Sean Tembo.
And for now, the popular candidate is Edgar Lungu.
Yes.
Back to my earlier question. Is popularity the solution to Zambia's current climate change crisis? Is popularity of Edgar Lungu the solution to the current issues of the power and energy crisis? Is popularity.
It's not only popularity. You're being simplistic, Costa. Stop being simplistic.
But I'm asking the questions.
Stop being simplistic.
But I'm asking the questions.
Stop being simplistic.
Is popularity? I'm not.
We didn't say popularity is the only variable. He's also a wise man, and he also has experience. So maybe you should put all of them and say, is he experience, wisdom, and popularity the best thing for the Zambian people?
I have not.
You should have asked.
I have not. But I'm asking, and you're stopping me. I'm asking. Maybe you don't like the way I'm asking. But
you're being simplistic.
I'm asking. No, you've told me. I've asked you why Edgar. You say he's the most popular.
Yeah.
So I'm asking.
Among other variables.
Is popularity the solution to the current
You should have asked to say, are there other variables?
Popularity the
There are other variables.
To the current high cost of living.
There are other variables.
Because Edgar has not given us a roadmap
There are
of
other
how
variables
to alleviate the current situation.
There are other variables, Costa. For instance, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu is the most experienced leader in Zambia as we speak today. You understand? Everything that you are seeing being mismanaged by the current administration, he was there. He managed it. You understand? Despite COVID, despite drought, he managed the prices of fuel, you know. He managed the prices of mini meal, you know. He managed the exchange rate, you know. So these guys don't have COVID. They don't have any huge natural disaster issues, but they are failing.
Is drought not a huge?
You keep interrupting me.
But I need to.
You're acting more like I'm speaking to the UPND Secretary General.
No, with all due respect. With all due respect.
Yeah.
No,
That's the way you're acting.
With all due respect, I would not allow you to brand me as a cadre.
No, I'm not saying you're a cadre. I'm saying you're acting like a cadre.
No, but if I keep you accountable, is it true?
You're not keeping me accountable. You are arguing with me and you are not allowing me to explain.
No, but when you say...
If I was having this discussion with the UPND Secretary General, then maybe I would understand.
Let's give it
but I'm having this discussion with you.
Are you being honest as a Zambian when you say there's no natural calamity right now when there's a drought? Are you being honest?
Which there is a drought. Even under PF there was a drought.
No, but this is what I'm saying. You're saying that they are not going through COVID. They're not going through anything. But I'm saying is there no drought?
Under the previous administration, they had a combination of all those calamities.
No,
but they still managed.
Yeah, but is it correct for you to say there's no calamity now?
Well, there is some drought, but you know that drought, Costa. Let me explain to you. That drought is not the way it is being portrayed by government. You know, Zambia is a big country. We have 10 provinces. You agree with me? At least let's agree on the provinces. We can argue on other things. Zambia has 10 provinces, isn't it? Out of those 10 provinces, Costa, 5 of them had ample rainfall, a lot of rainfall up there north. All the entire northern block had ample rainfall. Only the southern part of the country, the other 5 provinces, didn't have rainfall. So that's why the drought that we're talking about now cannot be compared with the drought we had in 2017, because the drought in 2017 was across the entire country. The only reason that the drought this time around sounds very prominent is because it has been hyped up by the current administration to explain their failures. If we had a competent government in office, Costa, if we had a competent government in office, the way we are going to have a competent government in office after 2026, we wouldn't be talking about lack of mini meal, lack of maize, no, because they would have ensured that those 5 provinces up there produced enough food to feed the other 5 provinces which are down here. But we had a situation whereby, because of the regional mind, they've got a very regional mind, the people in office, very regional mind. They distributed the majority of the farming inputs on the southern part of the country. You understand? And the northern part of the country didn't have farming inputs. So when the rains failed on the southern part of the country, you know, central and so on and so forth, there was total hunger across the country. If we had a competent government and if they had fairly distributed all the farming inputs, we would still have had a bumper harvest.
Again, I will stick to the facts.
Yes.
That from a political lens, you describe your political opponents, the UPND, as failing in leadership. That's a political lens. I will speak to what the experts are saying.
Who are those experts?
The Zambezi River Authority, the Meteorological Department.
No, parastatals under the current administration are not experts. Those are cadres also.
I am running the interview. You are not.
God.
So again, unless you want to curtail me to
you know, Costa, you're making statements. You're not asking questions. You should learn to ask questions.
I'm making statements of fact to justify my question.
That's why I'm saying it's like I'm debating with the UPND Secretary General, because you are making statements.
I think then we cannot understand each other.
You are making statements.
Because you are making political statements.
Yes, it's my job. I'm
making a statement.
You are the interviewer. Your job is to ask questions. My job is to answer the questions.
Can you allow me to do my job?
Yes.
Can you allow me to do my job?
Also allow me to do my job.
Yes, but I've given you a chance. So I'm making a statement of fact.
Don't make statements. Can you ask questions?
But I need
if you make statements, unless you tell me you've become a politician.
I'm giving a background to my question. The Zambezi River Authority has projected that there's low water levels in the Kariba. The Met Department, who you're calling cadres, apart from that, regional bodies that measure climatic conditions and weather globally have said the drought will not only hit Zambia, the El Nino has not only hit Zambia. Why then would you refuse that this is not a natural phenomena of its greatest magnitude when experts have said that this is a drought that has affected the country for the worst time in 100 years? I'm not making statements. I'm asking you a question on the basis of facts.
Can I answer now? And you won't interrupt me. Is that a deal? I answer. Okay, fine. So, when you look at these parastatals, Zambezi River Authority, this and that, those are not professional parastatals. Those are parastatals that are led by very politically inclined individuals. So whatever they say has got no credibility whatsoever. How can you say we've had the worst drought in the history of Zambia when 5 of the provinces had upper rainfall, even floods? How can you say that? And you call that body a professional body? It's not. That's a cadre organization, a UPND cadre organization. So those statements you are referring to, they carry no credibility, Costa. They carry no credibility whatsoever. Let's move on to something else.
So when these organizations exist before the UPND in 2015, in 2017, they were not politically inclined, they were not experts, because now it's the UPND, because the Zambezi River Authority, again, I think let's stick to facts, President Tembo. Let's stick to facts. The Zambezi River Authority is a shared body between Zambia and Zimbabwe to manage the Kariba Dam. So if you tell me this is a UPND infiltrated organization, a parastatal, and again for a statement of fact, that is not true. You're lying.
So, Costa, when you look at the Zambezi River Authority, their mandate and their jurisdiction is only the Lake Kariba.
And that's what I'm referring to.
Let me explain. Okay. So, the Zambezi River Authority cannot have jurisdiction, they cannot have mandate to pronounce the whole lot of Zambia as having had the worst drought in the history of this country.
They have not done that.
That's what you said earlier.
No.
That's what you said earlier.
No.
So the Zambezi River Authority can speak about the Kariba Dam. Let me finish.
No.
I'm explaining. Let me finish.
I will not allow you.
The Zambezi River Authority can speak authoritatively about the Kariba Dam, but they cannot speak authoritatively about the rest of the country.
No, President Tembo, please let's respect each other. I did say here that the Zambezi River Authority gave statistics over the water levels in the Kariba, hence the current energy crisis. I said that.
Well, if that's what you said, then...
And you were trying to stop me from giving a statement of fact. Why am I referring to this? Because you and I know very well, this is not rocket science, that the Kariba depends on rainfall and hydro sources. That's why I'm referring to them. On the current drought situation, I said the Met Department, who you called parastatals and cadres, and I further widen it to say it is not only the Met Department in Zambia, but regionally and globally, and an El Nino has been categorized.
So, Costa, any institution, whether it's a Met Department or anything, any institution that tells me or tells the Zambian people that we had the worst drought in the history of this country, that institution doesn't have credibility. Because like I clearly...
So even when the global... I
allowed you to speak.
There's an in the region.
I allowed you to speak. So can I speak as well? Okay. I allowed you to speak. And when I say it's like I'm debating with the UPND Secretary General, you get upset. But you're not allowing me to speak. Allow me to speak. Yes. So my point is that In 2017, we had a drought which covered the entire country. In this year and the previous year, we had a drought which covered 5 of the 10 provinces. In 1992, I don't know if you remember, 1992, we had a drought, in my view, the worst drought in the history of this country, when we were eating yellow maize and we were eating yellow bread and yellow buns. That was when we had the worst drought in the history of this country. What we had this year is not the worst drought. What we had this year is the worst government to handle a drought.
And this is why I'm saying let's stick to facts rather than in your view and opinion, because
those are facts. The fact that out of 10 provinces, the drought affected.
That's your opinion, but you want to stop
Costa, okay, let's agree on something. Is it my opinion? Is it my opinion that the current drought only affected 5 provinces?
Tembo, it's not your.
Is it my opinion that the current drought only affected 5 provinces? Can we address that at least?
It's your opinion.
It's not my opinion. It's a fact.
Because when the experts,
it's a fact. You can Google it.
Excuse me.
Google the Onino facts.
Excuse me. Can we have order? I'm asking the questions. I've given you time to speak.
No, allow me to explain and answer the question.
But I haven't asked any question.
You can't ask me a question and when I try to answer
it, a question.
You can't ask me a question.
I haven't asked you a question right now.
Listen, Costa, you can't make statements, wrong statements for 2 minutes and then ask me a question. You ask me a question after making statements for 2 minutes. You ask me a question and then when I try to answer that question, you can tell me.
You have justified to say in your
Then what is my point of being here? What would be my point of being here?
Just hold on.
You understand? You can't, Costa. You can't make statements for 2 minutes and then ask a question. When I try to answer that question, you can tell me. So effectively, what the viewers will listen to are your wrong statements, which you made for 2 minutes. We can't operate like that. We can't operate like that.
I think we need to correct what is true and what is statement of fact.
Yes.
We are giving.
It's a statement of fact that
we are giving what the experts are saying. You are giving an opinion.
It's not an opinion.
Base it on
facts.
It's a fact. Base it on numbers.
It's a fact. It's a fact, Costa, that out of the 10 provinces...
What empirical evidence are you giving based on what experts are saying to say this was not the worst drought? You're saying
it's not the worst drought because we had rainfall.
You are saying in your view.
We had rainfall in 5 of the 10 provinces.
Back it with facts. I've told you the experts...
Okay, facts. Okay, let me call my provincial chairman for Northern Province and ask him if they had ample rainfall. Then that would be a fact,
I cannot allow you to make a phone call in a program.
You want facts? So I want to give you facts.
No, obviously, if we're discussing...
The northern region of this country had ample rainfall. That's a fact, Costa. It's a fact. There's no need of arguing on facts.
Let's move on to the aspect of what the solutions are to the current crisis. And I ask this question on the basis of we have not heard that these are the solutions to the high cost of living. These are the solutions to the power crisis. This was my questions. And I was asking basically for the facts. Let's answer those questions.
What's your question again?
What is your candidate promising as solutions to the current problems?
Well, you know, my candidate, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who is the 6th Republican president and soon to be 8th Republican president, first of all, he's not going to start his presidency from zero. He's going to start his presidency with experience from his previous administration. You understand? So when you talk about issues like agriculture, one of the reasons we don't have food security right now is because the current administration are failing to deliver farming inputs. So my candidate, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, will not need to do any magic. He will not need to do anything out of this world. No. He will simply continue doing what he was doing when he was in office, and which was to distribute ample farming inputs to the farmers, 6 bags per person, as well as 10 kg of groundnuts, 10 kg, 20 kg of maize, and so on and so forth. So he will not need to do anything out of this world, no. He will simply continue to do and implement the policies he had in agriculture. Talk about mining. Can I move to mining now?
I asked you about the power crisis.
Okay, I'll come to the power crisis.
So
I'll come to the power crisis
challenge
and
that
the
you're
cost
not
of
answering my questions, you say I'm a UPND cadre.
Okay, let me go directly to the power crisis. Is that fine? So that we can begin to make friends.
Since you're the interviewer here, you're the commander-in-chief
so that we can begin to make friends, Costa. The power crisis, Costa, and here, these are technical issues. So if it is possible, try not to interrupt me. I want to explain about the power crisis.
As long as you tell the truth.
As long as
you tell the truth.
Yeah, of course. You are not a measure of what is true and what is not. Far from it. You are not. Well, so anyway, let's move on. That's the problem of being interviewed by Ombu. You can pretty much say anything. So on the power issue, Costa, when the Patriotic Front administration were leaving office in 2021, our consumption as a nation at peak hour was about 2,200 megawatts. Okay. And our total production was about 2,950 megawatts. So we had an excess of about 750 megawatts. Okay. Now, do you know what the key variables were to bring about that excess? The biggest variable, which the Dr. Edgar Chagwarungo's administration introduced in the energy sector, was the independent power producers. That is it, the biggest variable. So by 2021, there was a wide variety of independent power producers, each one of which was producing whatever they could to add to the grid. You had Ndora Energy, they were producing about 40 megawatts. You had Rusefa Power, they were producing about 66 megawatts, and so on and so forth. And they were helping ZESCO. You understand? So the majority of the power was being produced from alternative sources. Now, post-2021, after our friends in the UPND came into office, they stopped paying the independent power producers. Why? Because they believed that those were PF companies or PF-aligned companies. So if you look at the strategy of President Hichilema, is to cut off the funding, any potential funding to the opposition. So anyone, let me finish.
Again, if I interject, because honestly, you're not telling the truth.
Let me finish. Let me finish, Costa. Let me finish. You are spoiling the interview, Costa. You are spoiling the interview.
Are you saying?
You are spoiling the interview. Let me finish.
No. I want to ask you the question on what you've said. Are you saying during the PF, the IPPs were never owed by ZESCO?
They were owed, but they were being paid. You understand? So they would accumulate maybe 3 months arrears, but then they would liquidate, and then it was a rolling basis. But under the UPND completely stopped paying all the independent power producers. That is why, Costa, that is why companies like Ndora Energy shut down. Companies like a lot of companies, even Mamba Collieries, at some point, they literally shut down completely. So by the time the drought was coming, we had, because our economic activities had shrunk, so even the demand for our power had kind of shrunk. So by 2023, our total demand at peak hour was barely about 2,000 megawatts. And our total generation was largely dependent on ZESCO, largely Kariba. So it was literally matching. It was like this. Because most of the independent power producers had shut down because the UPND was not paying them, in the fear that they were connected to the previous administration. So by the time the drought came...
So you agree there's a drought? Let me
finish. By the time, yes, there was a drought. It's just not the worst drought in the history of this country. I don't agree with that exaggeration. But I agree there was a drought. It's there for all to see. And I've said it earlier, that half of Zambia had a drought and the other half had ample rainfall. You see that you are now being a politician. Did I say there was no drought?
No. You said there was no calamity.
No.
You said there was no calamity.
I didn't say there was no drought. I said half of Zambia had rains, the other half had the drought. So you are manipulating things.
No,
you are manipulating things, Costa.
I can't manipulate.
You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I'm asking you. You're here to answer for yourself.
Let me finish. So by the time the drought came, the independent power producers who were producing power from alternative sources were completely off the table. That is why, in terms of load shedding, the impact is higher. Had the UPND administration maintained those independent power producers, we would not have been this adversely affected by the shutdown of Kariba, because we would have still managed... Let me finish, Costa.
I just want clarity. So what you're saying is, we're in this situation due to the lack of payment to the IPPs and not more so the drought.
So that is it. There are two key issues.
I'm trying to clarify what you're saying.
There are two key issues. So one is the refusal by the UPND administration to pay independent power producers, which resulted in all of them, pretty much all of them being shut down. And when the drought came, then that's when government was now scrambling trying to pay them so that they can recommence production. You saw that. You saw Ndola Energy, even the president mentioned it. He said, no, we've paid the independent power producers, they should be able to put some power on the grid. They said that. It's in the public domain. So there was that issue. That is number one issue. The number two issue, why the load shedding is so pronounced, is because of the continued export of power despite the drought. Up to now, power is still being exported. So those two issues are the issues which have compounded the load shedding.
So let me ask a follow-up, and again, back to my question. In Ndola Energy, for example, you said the PF left it at 40 megawatts, and they were paying them on time. The UPND took over, and they were not paying them. Are you aware that Ndola Energy has ramped up production to over 105 megawatts?
Well, it's possible. It's possible.
Because
now government is being desperate and they are now paying. But the point, I'm not aware. I'm not aware.
So when I tell you, you tell me I'm behaving like a cadre, but that's a fact because
I don't know if it's a fact.
It was announced.
To be honest, Costa, I don't have much trust in anything you say.
Well, then don't come to this show then.
No, because you've demonstrated
No.
that you're able to put words in my mouth.
It's a fact. It's a fact.
I don't think it's a fact.
It is a fact.
I don't think it's a fact.
It is a fact that Ndola Energy has
there are two issues, Costa.
That's number one. Number two.
Let me just ask you. Let me clarify something.
Number two,
Costa, let me clarify something. There are two issues when you are dealing with the current administration. There are two issues. There is the reality and the plan. So you are talking about.
I'm not talking.
Listen, let me finish, Kangi. Let me finish. So when you because I heard you before I interrupted you, I heard what you said. You said there was a launch. So at that launch, what was said is the plan to produce 105 megawatts. Not that there is actual production of 105 megawatts. I just wanted to provide that clarity.
Unfortunately, I'll need to end the interview because we can't agree on anything. First of all, you're calling me a cadre. You're calling me.
We've been here for more than an hour. I'm sure you've recorded enough.
You're calling me non-trustworthy. But for the journalist that I am, I think I will not be allowed to be called such names because statements that have been released by ERB with proof of how much Ndola Energy is producing.
I don't believe that.
So
I don't believe that.
I will not argue with you on that. But what I will not be accept is to be called a person who's misrepresenting facts.
You are.
No,
it's a matter of fact.
This Ndola Energy is producing over 105 megawatts.
You know, you misrepresented facts on the issue of the drought.
Thank you so much for coming to this interview.
It's a pleasure to have you.
We end tonight's interview on that note. My guest has been the Tonse Alliance spokesperson, Tembo. We've been discussing the formation of the Tonse Alliance. They've endorsed President Edgar Chagwa Lungu as their candidate for the 2026 election. We wait and see what happens, obviously, on the formidability of this alliance. They pledge that many more opposition members will be joining them. And obviously, on the fact that on the 10th of December is that ruling over President Lungu's eligibility. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, the live stream is Diamond TV Online. It's also Diamond Media Zambia. Good night.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.